Hey, this is Mr. Koken, and this is Algebra 1 Geometry Preview Lesson on Pythagorean Theorem. So, the Pythagorean Theorem is something that you'll definitely be using in geometry, and you've probably seen it in the past, like 8th grade or something. This is the Pythagorean Theorem. It has to do with right triangles, and that means a triangle that has a 90-degree angle in it. These marks represent a 90-degree angle. So what it's saying is, and this is how it's usually said, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. What that means is one leg squared plus the other leg squared equals the hypotenuse squared. Now, with a right triangle, there are two legs and a hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is the longest side. Okay? Hypotenuse. It's the longest side, and it's not touching the right angle. So when you see this mark inside a triangle, this is your right angle, your 90-degree angle. The hypotenuse is the side opposite the right angle that's not coming out of it. So if you look at the three sides, here's the right angle. The two sides that are touching the right angle that are coming out of it are the legs. The other side is the hypotenuse. I always suggest to students, when we're dealing with the right triangles, that the first thing you should do is label the hypotenuse. Now later on you'll need to label, depending, like when we're doing other things in geometry, you'll have to label each of these sides. But with the Pythagorean Theorem, you don't need to. Just label the hypotenuse. And I'm just going to put an H on the hypotenuse. What I'm then going to do is set up an equation. And my equation looks like this. I've got a squared plus b squared equals c squared. That means, again, a leg, one of the sides that is not the hypotenuse, I'm going to write it as the first side squared. Notice I put the squares do the second power. And then I'm going to put plus, and then I'm going to put the other side squared. Here it's x. Now we don't know what x equals right now, and that's okay. We're going to find out. That's going to be our goal. And then we're going to do the hypotenuse squared. So the hypotenuse, not touching the right angle, right now it's got this symbol, square root of 257. And that is squared. Square root of 257 squared. Now, first thing I'm going to do on this equation, this is a pretty simple equation. First thing I'm going to do is simplify. So 11 squared, 11 times 11 equals 121. So I'm going to rewrite it as 121. And use a calculator if you need to on this. Plus x squared. X squared, of course, I can't do anything to. We don't know what x equals, so I'm just still going to say x squared. Okay? Equals. Now this is a part that is very easy, but until you know how to do it, of course, it's not easy. Square root of 257 squared. The trick here. Anytime you see a square root and a square on the same number, they cancel out. A square root is the opposite of a square. It's like having doing times 2 divided by 2 or something. It cancels. So we're going to rewrite it as just 257. And now it's a two-step equation. We're going to start by minusing 121 on both sides. And now we get x squared by itself. Hopefully all of this will show up on the bottom of my screen. I think it will. And then we're going to subtract. Here we'll get 136. We get x squared equals 136. Now this is where you want to get your calculator. Ideally, you'll have a calculator that will give you the simplified square root, but you might not. And if you don't, that is okay. On your calculator, and I'm using my phone calculator. I don't have a good calculator at home, but the phone works fine. So I'm going to do, here's what I'm going to do. Remember that the square root is the opposite of a square. Let me rewrite. I'm going to rewrite this line up here just for room. I'm going to put x squared equals 136. No, the answer is not, of course, 136. We have one more thing to do. We have to get rid of this square. Just said, what's the opposite of a square? A square root, as we just saw here. So I want to cancel this square by square rooting. Well, whatever I do to one side, I have to do to both. So I'm going to find the square root of 136. Getting ahead of myself a little bit with the calculator, but that's what I'm going to put in the calculator. Square root 136. And what this is going to give you is, if it depends, if you're doing it on the phone like I am, it's going to give you around 11.66, something in that general area. If you don't do it on the phone, if you don't do it on a phone calculator, you do it on like a TI calculator or something, like the kind of calculators that you'd probably be using in school. You're going to get, let's see, I got to put it on check on the computer because my calculator can't handle that. You'll get 2 root 34. Anyway, I want to be clear about something. These are the same thing. So here's what I mean. So if you take the square root of 136 and you simplify it, you'll get 2 times the square root of 34. That's if you simplify it. We've talked in the past about how to do that months ago in class. If you put it in and if you put it in a calculator, it will simplify it. It could simplify it for you. If your calculator does not simplify square roots, and it gives you just the digits, the value, you'll get an irrational number. That's what it will give you. Either one's fine. They mean the same thing. Okay. That looks like a lot of work. It's just solving equations. This, again, looks like more than it is. Once you get used to it, it's the main part of it is setting it up correctly. Because once you set it up, it's just solving a 2-step equation. So not too bad. So that's this problem. Now, notice though, this is where we're trying to solve for one of the legs, for either A or B. Well, what if we have one that looks like this problem? On this one, we're solving for the hypotenuse. So I'm going to erase this. If you need to get a view of it, you can pause it. If you need to write it down. And I erased one of the numbers. I believe that was a 14. I got it off of our assignment, so let me make sure I put the right number down. It was a 14. Good. Okay. So we just saw on the first problem what happens when we are solving for x as a leg. we're finding the value of one of the length of one of the legs. Well, in this case, remember, first thing we want to do is label the hypotenuse. Which side is not touching the right angle? Well, we have a 14 and an 8 that are coming out of the right angle. That means the side not touching the right angle, that's the hypotenuse, that is x. So when I write this problem out, I'm going to write 14 squared plus 8 squared. So 14 squared plus 8 squared, which is a squared plus b squared. And now I'm going to put that it equals the hypotenuse squared. Now, a good thing about this one is, and this is usually what I'll suggest to a student when they're doing this, if you have a calculator to work this out on, which could be like me and use your phone, and that is just put the whole thing in a calculator. And here's what I mean. So you can do 14 squared and get 196. And then you can do 8 squared and get 64. Add those together. I personally much prefer just putting the whole thing together in a calculator and simplifying it down to 260. Just 14 squared plus 8 squared in a calculator and get 260 equals 8 squared. I mean x squared, I misspoke. The reason for this, hopefully it's kind of obvious. The reason for this is to try to make this a little bit just less work, and put less on your paper and less for that you can make a mistake with and get confused with. So I would say just put in your calculator, type in 14 squared plus 8 squared, simplify that by itself, and you get 260. And it's equal to x squared. Now, this is a one-step equation. Now, so all we're going to do is, remember what's the opposite of, let me step back 1 second. We have x squared. We want to just solve for x. We want to get rid of the squared. So we have to get, what's the opposite of square is square root. Let's take the square root of both sides, and that will be the answer. So square root of 260, I'm about to put in my calculator here. Square root of 260, I see if I will give me 16.12, about that. I'm going to rewrite it up here. Square root of 260. I'm going to get 16.12. That is my approximately the answer. Notice I put this again. I put the squiggly looking equal sign to represent and it's an approximation. If I simplify that down, I could get 2 root 65 equals x. Again, either one of these is fine. I don't really care which one. They mean the same thing. So, that's a lot of information. It's a lot of information dealing with the Pythagorean Theorem. Do you just go over it one more time, kind of in a more, hopefully, simplify it. Whenever you see a right triangle and you're solving with the Pythagorean Theorem, you're going to take one side squared, one leg squared, and I need to even back up a step further. First thing you should do, find the side that's not attached to the right angle, label it as the hypotenuse. Second thing, write your equation. One side, one leg squared, plus the other leg squared equals the hypotenuse squared. Once you've set it up, It's nothing more than solving an equation. And one like this problem here, you can see you can solve it very quickly. Don't be afraid to use your calculator. If you don't have a calculator, you can simplify a square root without a calculator if you remember how. I'd rather you just use a calculator and you should find the answer pretty quickly. So anyway, that's the Pythagorean Theorem. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day.